The text message lit up my phone late on a Tuesday. My mother's name, Sarah. I opened it. "We've sold the land. The locks on the garage are changed. You're out. Let's see how you survive now. Ha ha." I read it twice. The words were a slap, but the ha ha, that was the twist of the knife. It wasn't just a betrayal, it was a victory lap. I didn't cry. I didn't panic. The anger that rose up in me wasn't hot. It was cold. It was clarifying. They thought they had finally locked me out. They thought they had won. I just smiled. They had absolutely no idea what they had just unleashed. Drop a comment and let me know where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. I'd love to know who's part of our community. I didn't throw my phone. I didn't dial my mother's number and scream. I just sat there in the quiet of my apartment and I felt that cold, calm smile spread across my face. It wasn't happiness, it was accounting. They thought they had locked me out of the garage. They had forgotten that I was the one who held all the keys to the business. I opened my laptop. The screen glowed in the dark. I navigated to the supplier portal for Cleveland's biggest auto parts dealer. My name, Madison, was the one on the account. My personal credit card was the one on file, guaranteeing every single purchase. I saw the order my father Joseph must have placed just that morning, a shipment of 12 new transmissions scheduled for delivery tomorrow. I clicked cancel. I went to the equipment leasing site. The brand new top-of-the-line diagnostic machine they were so excited about. The lease was in my name, my credit, my guarantee. Cancel. The standing order for 24 tires from the Goodyear wholesaler cancel. By 12:03 a.m., just minutes after they had declared their victory, I had systematically frozen their entire supply chain. The garage, as a functioning business, would be dead in the water by morning. They couldn't so much as order a wrench without me. To understand why I had this power, you have to understand my family. To understand why I didn't feel a shred of guilt, you have to understand the last 10 years. My name is Madison. I'm 29 and I'm a mechanic. A really good one. My family owns or owned an auto garage in Cleveland. It was my grandfather's legacy, but for the last decade it's been my burden. My father Joseph is the charming front man. He loves shaking hands and telling stories, but he doesn't know the difference between a socket wrench and a torque wrench. My mother Sarah cares only about appearances, about the social status the idea of the garage gave her. And then there's my sister, Taylor. Taylor is 24. She is the golden child. She's the one my mother lives through. Taylor is beautiful, charismatic, and has never not once set foot in the garage. She's allergic to grease, she always said. Allergic to work, I always thought. I was the responsible one. That's the word they used for me. Responsible. It sounds like a compliment, but in my family it was a life sentence. While Taylor was getting a fully funded business degree and a clothing allowance for her networking events, I was in the garage. I started sweeping floors at 15. By 19, I was rebuilding engines. By 22, I wasn't just the lead mechanic, I was the bookkeeper, the inventory manager, the supplier liaison. I was the only thing keeping the business from foreclosure. The garage wasn't just failing, it was a black hole. And I was the only one pouring anything in. It wasn't just my time, it was my money. $170,000. I know the exact number because as an accountant, I keep meticulous records. It started 5 years ago when the bank was going to call the note on my father's business loan, $90,000. I took out a loan in my name using my perfect credit to cover it. I told myself it was an investment in the family legacy. Then 3 years ago, the old hydraulic lifts were condemned. My father wanted to shut down, but I found a way. I drained my savings $45,000 to buy 2 new lifts and a modern diagnostic machine. The garage couldn't function without them. And the worst part, the part that makes me sick to even think about, $35,000 over the last 2 years just to cover payroll. Little top-ups, a few thousand here, a few thousand there, so my father wouldn't have to face the embarrassment of telling his employees their checks would bounce. People always ask Madison why. Why did you keep pouring good money after bad? Why didn't you just walk away? It's so easy to see from the outside. But when you're in it, you're tangled in what I call the invisible chain of the survivor. You see, when you grow up in an environment where your value is tied to your usefulness, you learn that being responsible is your only way to earn a scrap of affection. You're not a person, you're a pillar. And you're terrified that if you move, if you stop holding everything up, the entire structure will collapse and it will be all your fault. It's a prison without bars. It's a form of learned helplessness, where you become so conditioned to the dynamic that you stop seeing the door. You just keep holding the weight, believing that your sacrifice will one day be recognized. You believe that if you are just good enough, just strong enough, just useful enough, one day they will finally see you. But they don't, because they are caught in their own trap, the trap of normalized cruelty. In their minds, they weren't being cruel. They were just operating in the roles we had all accepted. My father, Joseph, was the patriarch. My mother, Sarah, was the social manager. My sister, Taylor, was the golden child, the one who was supposed to succeed, the one who was meant for a bigger life. And I was the responsible one. When they took my money, it didn't feel like theft to them. It just felt right. It was just Madison being Madison. It was the responsible daughter doing her responsible duty. They had normalized the idea that my purpose was to fund Taylor's. While I was draining my savings to pay for a new transmission lift, Taylor was posting pictures from her graduation trip to Europe, a trip my mother proudly told everyone the garage had paid for. They weren't evil. Not in the way you see in movies. They were something far more common and far more terrifying. They were people who had justified their own cruelty for so long that they had forgotten it was cruel at all. My phone started exploding at 7 a.m. First, a furious voicemail from my father, Joseph. He wasn't asking, he was yelling. Madison, what did you do? Our suppliers are all canceling. The garage is at a standstill. You've created a complete mess. You need to fix this, and you need to fix it. Now. Seconds later, a text from my sister Taylor. You are overreacting. Mom was just upset, you know how she gets. You need to call the parts dealer back. This is really embarrassing me. Embarrassing her. Of course. And then the grand finale. My mother, Sarah, went public on Facebook. It's just so sad when children forget who raised them. We gave them everything, and they try to destroy the family over a little disagreement. I read every message. I listened to every voicemail. And in that entire barrage of panic and accusations, not a single one asked why. Not one person said, "Are you okay?" or "Maybe we went too far." They weren't sorry for what they did. They were just furious that I had finally locked the bank. Their lack of remorse was the final, haha. It was the last bit of permission I needed. It proved they felt nothing for me, and it greenlit my next move. I didn't reply to a single one of them. I let their panic echo into the silence. I made myself a cup of coffee. I opened my laptop, and I made a different call. Sierra, hi, it's Madison. Sierra was my old college roommate. We had survived late-night study sessions and bad cafeteria food together. Now she was a partner at one of the top commercial law firms in Cleveland. Madi, it's been a minute. Everything okay? I took a deep breath. Not really. I need a lawyer. I told her everything. The decade of unpaid work, the golden child sister, the haha text. And then I told her the numbers, the $90,000 loan, the $45,000 equipment, the $35,000 in payroll, the $170,000 in total. There was a long, heavy silence on the other end of the line. When Sierra finally spoke, her voice was ice. Madi, they didn't just lock you out. What you're describing is a textbook case of unjust enrichment. Promissory estoppel. They have no idea what they've done. She paused. I've never been happier to be a lawyer. What do you want, Maddie? Tell me exactly what you want. I want what I'm owed, I said. Good, she replied, because we're going to get it. Sierra was brutal. She didn't waste time. That same morning, she drafted a formal notice, a demand letter. It wasn't an email. It was delivered by a legal courier to my parents' house, that same afternoon arriving, just as they were probably sitting down to dinner wondering why I was still ignoring their calls. The terms were simple. They had 30 days. Option 1. Initiate a full, legally binding repayment plan for the $170,000 I had invested. Option 2. Grant me an immediate 50% equity stake in the sale of the land. If they failed to respond, or if they chose to ignore the demand, a lawsuit for unjust enrichment would be filed immediately, seeking the full amount plus interest and legal fees. This wasn't a family argument anymore. This was a legal battle. And I had just brought a tank to a knife fight. Sierra called me back 2 days later. I was expecting an update on the demand letter, maybe a furious counteroffer from my father. What I got was a bomb. Madi, are you sitting down? She asked. Her voice was different. That sharp, lawyerly confidence was still there, but it was mixed with a kind of cold fury I'd never heard before. I am now. What's wrong? I did some digging on the land sale, she said. The LLC that bought the property. I ran the corporate filings. The CEO of that development firm, the man who signed the purchase agreement, who is it? His name is Warren Hayes. Does that name mean anything to you? I thought for a second. No. Wait. Yes. Hayes. Taylor's fiancé. His last name is Hayes. Warren Hayes is Taylor's future father-in-law, Sierra, said, her voice flat. My blood ran cold. I sank down onto my couch. It wasn't just a random sale. It was a deal. They weren't just selling the land for Taylor. They were selling it to Taylor's new family. It was a dowry, a business transaction to secure her social climbing marriage. My work, my money, my life was being liquidated to buy my sister's future. The calculation of it, the cold-blooded planning, it was staggering. Sierra, I whispered. That is monstrous. Get ready, she said, her voice dropping. That's not even the worst part. What could possibly be worse? That $90,000 business loan, she said. The one you've been so dutifully paying off for the last 5 years. The one that started this whole mess. What about it? I had a hunch. I subpoenaed the original loan application from the bank. I got it an hour ago. I waited. The silence on the phone felt heavy, suffocating. Madison, she said, and I could hear her shuffling a paper. You told me your father asked you to help pay it. You took out a separate loan to cover his payments. Yes, I said. He was going to default. He couldn't default, Sierra said, because he had a personal guarantor. I didn't understand. What do you mean? Madison, your father forged your signature. I stopped breathing. Your name is on the original loan document as the personal guarantor. He signed your name. That's why he came to you for the money. He wasn't asking for help. He was covering his tracks. If that loan defaulted Madi, the bank wouldn't have just come for the garage. They would have come for you, your apartment, your savings, everything. This was the kill shot. It wasn't just greed. It wasn't just favoritism. It wasn't just a family dispute. This was a crime. This was fraud. All those years, all that sacrifice. I hadn't been helping. I had been cleaning up the evidence of his felony. The haha on the text message suddenly made a new sickening kind of sense. They weren't just locking me out because they were ungrateful. They were locking me out because they thought the deal was done, the land was sold, and I, the star witness to their crime, was no longer needed. I didn't say anything. I just sat there, the phone pressed to my ear as the last shred of my old life, the last flicker of family obligation turned to ash. The lawsuit for fraud and unjust enrichment landed on their doorstep like a bomb, and the shrapnel hit everyone. Sierra called me the following Monday. You're not going to believe this, she said, and I could hear the smile in her voice. That developer, Warren Hayes Taylor's future father-in-law, he got wind of our lawsuit. Apparently, he does not like the idea of his son marrying into a family that is about to be publicly cited for forgery and fraud. I gripped my coffee mug. What does that mean? It means he's threatening to pull out, Sierra said, of the land deal. And according to my source of the engagement, he doesn't want his family name tied to a criminal investigation. So the very deal they had betrayed me to secure the one they'd committed a crime for. My lawsuit was about to incinerate it. The panic must have been immediate. The calls started again, but this time they weren't angry. They were desperate. My father, my sister, I ignored them all. Then on Tuesday night there was a knock on my apartment door, a frantic, weak pounding. I looked through the peephole. It was my mother, Sarah. She wasn't the proud, perfectly put-together matriarch who had posted on Facebook about ungrateful children. The woman standing in my hallway was a wreck. Her hair was a mess, her eyes were red and swollen, and her expensive clothes were rumpled. The facade had shattered. I opened the door. Madison, please, she said, her voice cracking. She tried to grab my arm. I stepped back. Please, you have to stop this, she sobbed. You don't understand what you're doing. Warren Hayes is going to back out of the land deal. He's going to call off Taylor's wedding. I just looked at her, my face calm. I said nothing. He's giving us 24 hours to make this lawsuit go away, or it's all over, she continued, the tears streaming down her face. Taylor is hysterical, her entire future. Madison, her life. You're ruining it. She's your sister. I thought of my sister's text. This is really embarrassing me. I thought of my mother's haha. This isn't about the money, Mom, I said, my voice as cold and flat as steel. You know that, right? Then what is it about? She pleaded. Us. Just tell me what you want. We'll pay you. We'll figure it out. Just do something for your sister. That was the line, the one they had used my entire life. Do something for Taylor. Do something for the family that had bled me dry and then laughed when they threw me away. Okay, I said quietly. Her head snapped up, a flicker of desperate hope in her red eyes. Really, oh Madison, thank you, I knew. I already did, I said. I stepped back into my apartment, picked up a folded document from my table, and handed it to her. She fumbled with it, confused. What? What is this? Is this the settlement? Did you sign it? That, I said, is a copy of the criminal complaint for forgery I filed against Dad this afternoon. The one I sent to the district attorney. And to Mr. Warren Hayes. Her face went completely white. She looked from the paper to me and back to the paper. The hope in her eyes died, replaced by a new dawning horror. Goodbye, Mom, I said, and I closed the door. The criminal complaint for forgery wasn't a bluff. It was the end of the game. Faced with irrefutable proof of a felony, my father's leverage and his pride evaporated. The developer Warren Hayes backed out of the land deal immediately. Sierra told me the engagement to Taylor was called off just as fast. Apparently embarrassing was one thing, but marrying into a family facing active fraud charges was another. The legal case was, as Sierra called it, a slaughter. We never even saw the inside of a courtroom. Their lawyers saw the forgery evidence and immediately pushed for a settlement. The terms were simple and brutal. They had no cards left to play. They were forced to sell the garage land at a public auction immediately to cover their debts. When the dust settled after the banks and the creditors were paid, the remaining sum was split. My father Joseph was also sentenced to 3 years of probation for felony fraud. I sat at my laptop, the same one I had used to click cancel. I watched my bank account as the wire transfer cleared. $350,000. I opened my old accounting spreadsheet, the one I had spent years meticulously maintaining. I looked at the line item, $170,000. All the loans, the lifts, the payroll, the years of my life, condensed into one number. I stared at it for a long time. This wasn't just a spreadsheet. It was a ledger of my pain. It was the price of my family's approval, an approval that was never real. I highlighted the file, and I hit delete. That night, for the first time in my life, I slept without dreaming of Greece and unpaid invoices. I slept without the weight of being the responsible one. But the story doesn't end there. Because revenge, I learned, isn't about destruction. It's not about the money you get back. It's about what you build with it. There are two kinds of justice in this world. There's the justice of the storm, the kind that tears everything down just to settle a score. And then there's the justice of the sower, the kind that plants a new seed. I chose to be the sower. It took 6 months. I used every penny of that settlement to buy an old rundown garage on the other side of Cleveland. I cleaned it, painted it, and invested in the best new equipment. Today, my new garage M-Tech Auto is open. It's clean, it's bright, and it's mine. We're already booked out for 3 weeks. Just this morning, I was working under a classic Mustang when my new apprentice, a young woman just out of trade school, looked at me with that familiar mix of excitement and fear. "Madison," she asked, "are you sure I'm ready for this?" I looked at her, seeing a younger version of myself. I wiped the grease from my hands, picked up a clean torque wrench, and placed it firmly in her palm. "You're ready," I said. "Let me show you how." I'm finally free. I'm not just a mechanic. I'm not a daughter. I am a builder. And this is my legacy. Have you ever had to choose yourself over the family you were given? Have you ever had to tear everything down just to find the space to plant something new? Let me know your story down in the comments.